Today, I thought I would answer a few of the questions I get about cookbooks. And for those of you who don't know, Postcards from the Kitchen is a production of the Cookbook Creative. And I started the Cookbook Creative a couple of years ago because I started noticing that, number one, we're not capturing some of the recipes that are near and dear to our hearts in a place where we can easily share them with others. And maybe our biggest audience right now is people who own food brands. So think about ingredients that you find on the grocery store shelves, people who have put together these special concoctions and want to teach customers how to use them and become a loyal customer. So those are the kinds of people that we're working with. So it's food brands. It may be people who manufacture small appliances for the kitchen or kitchen gadgets, but anybody that's really related to food and wants to share recipes, also wants to leverage the power of stories when they share those recipes. So let me run down the list of the questions. All right. So I just told you pretty much who we're working with these days. So the next question I get is, what is the process? Now, for people who want to put together a beautiful cookbook that would look great, either, on the coffee table or certainly on the cookbook shelf in your kitchen, the typical process is, first of all, we write, second of all, we design, and third of all, we publish. All right, so writing. That means that I am typically doing interviews with you to capture your stories and get as I say, the stories behind the food. So I talk to you, gather that up, and then I go away and I start writing. So I'm pulling information from that interview I did with you. It's still your words. Everything is going to sound like you. It's going to reflect your personality and your brand, but you've got somebody to help you do the writing. And this is no offense to anybody who's working their way through their own project right now, their own cookbook project. It takes a while, and it takes longer sometimes than you think it's going to if you're doing it on your own. So it's our job to help you speed that process up. All right. So that's what's happening. I'm writing. And then while I'm doing that, you are working on gathering up your recipes, deciding how you want to organize those recipes. And you're also working on your photography. The smartphones these days are so good. You can get really good usable photos. We can also help you find really good stock photos if you don't have access to photos. And finally, we can hook you up with a great photographer who can come in and take those custom pictures of your food if that's what you prefer. We've done it each of those ways I just described, and it ends up being a beautiful book. So they all work just fine. After we've written it, it goes to design. We have a stellar designer, Megan Giles, who has been working with us from the very beginning, and she does a custom design for every single book we do. So your book is not going to look like anyone else's book. I guarantee it. And finally, we go to production and publication. So production means we're going to take you all the way to the file that you need in order to go to print or to upload your file to Amazon or to make it available wholesale to sell in bookstores. And we can help you do all of those things. But what you need to know is that the first task is to go through the writing, the design, and the ultimate production of that file. All right. After that, we can talk about printing and other things. Let's get you to the start. That's the starting line, right? That's where it's time to start marketing. All right. How long does it take? That's another question I get. And it can take, I will say it probably averages 4 months, 4 to 6 months. And most of that depends on how quickly you're working on your end to gather up the recipes, get those photos together, and then approve each phase of our writing and design. So sometimes we find that's where it drags a little bit. But in our experience, it can easily be done in 4 to 6 months, and you'll have a book in your hand. All right. Next question. Do people still buy cookbooks? Heck yes, they do. The cookbook market is still growing for printed cookbooks. People collect them, people like to share them, and sometimes they'll buy the book for one single recipe, but they love making that recipe over and over exactly as it's described in the book. So if you're sitting there thinking it's the digital age, nobody's using it, think about what you want to do in the kitchen. Do you want to go in there with your iPad or your computer and try not to spill things on it? Or do you want to take a book in there and prop it up and make your new recipe and make notes and make it your own? So that's a lot of fun, and that's why cookbooks are still selling. Let's see. The next one is, why are cookbooks really good marketing tools for these food brands that I was describing? So the food brands, the small appliances, the kitchen gadgets, cookbooks work really well because there's so much competition. There's so much competition. So how do you make yourself stand out? A cookbook is a really great way to do that. It also helps you tell your story. So it gets you in front of people in a very memorable way. It opens up those opportunities for PR and connections with the media. It builds a relationship with your customers because they get to know you personally through this cookbook, and they develop favorite recipes that they want to come back to over and over. Now, the last thing I'll say about that is that sometimes when we're working together, people don't want to give up their secret family recipes. So, number one, you can change it up a little bit if you want before you share it. Make sure it's still a really great recipe. But the thing I tell people, especially in the restaurant business or chefs over and over, is that people are not going to go home and regularly make your favorite recipe. They want it the way you make it. All right. So the fact that you share makes you a very generous person. That wins you brownie points right there and makes people more likely to come and visit you because they're never going to do it exactly the same way you do. And they love that memorable experience that you have given them through your recipe. So I would say don't worry about giving up the secret family recipes. Just share and let's all have a big time in the kitchen. Send me any additional questions you have, and I'll be sure to answer those on a future episode, or I'll send you a message directly. You can contact me at hello@thecookbookcreative.com. Have a good one. Have fun in the kitchen, and I'll see you next time.